We should be aware that as a result of the research performed to develop
two other people that was a big round of applause for her magnificent performance. Assalamu alaikum. Peace be unto you all for being here with us this morning, afternoon, evening, and night, wherever you may reside. Welcome to the Afro-Descendant Nation Self-Determination Summit 2022, the first of more to come as we Afro-Descendants seek to become a self-determining people as other civilized people of the world do. I am Dr. Akila Mukaram, President of the Afro-Descendant Nation. I would like to recognize and welcome our monarch, Queen Mashaki Muhammad, and the Honorable Silas Muhammad, the man who is responsible for causing such an event. Welcome to our esteemed speakers and guests on the panel, whom you will hear from soon during this roundtable discussion. And welcome to you, our viewing audience. Thank you for being here with us today. It is a pleasure and honor to serve as moderator of this historical event, the Afro-Descendant Nation Self-Determination Summit. Speakers, you will have 3 to 5 minutes to speak on each topic. Please be mindful and adhere to the time. Invited panel guests, you may come in and ask questions during the 15-minute Q&A after all panelist speakers have spoken on the topic. The Honorable Silas Muhammad will speak on all 3 topics after topic number 3, Q&A. Etiquette in this virtual space. Please be respectful of self and others. Listen for understanding. Be humble. There are 2 sides to every story, and please seek the positive. Ensure that every voice is heard. This is our safe space. If you step away for a few minutes, be sure to turn your camera off until you return. Keep your mic muted until it is your turn to speak. Thank you. We will now begin with our first topic. Speakers, please give a brief introduction of yourselves and then proceed to answer the question of this topic when I call your name. We will begin with Dr. Brooks Robinson. With Dr. Robinson, he will speak on the topic of what does self-determination look like for you, Afro-descendants, for descendants of what does self-determination look like to you for descendants of enslaved Africans?
Thank you very much for that introduction to the topic, this first topic. I'm Dr. Brooks Robinson, founder and co-contributor to BlackEconomics.org, which is an internet portal that features vigorous analyses of Black economic concepts, issues, policies, and plans. To the Most Honorable Silas Muhammad, Queen Muhammad, President Dr. Mukarram, who just brought me on, Pastor Brady, who delivered an excellent introduction, Dr. Broner, the producer of this summit, and even to Bevan, our engineer. And I should not forget to also recognize all of the distinguished panelists for this Afro-Descendant Nation Self-Determination Summit. It's obviously a great pleasure and honor to be here, and I'm excited to have been invited to participate. I'll try to be as brief as I can be on this topic. Now, let's start by saying in the field of scientific inquiry, probably the most important question is why. Accordingly, before we turn to the question that has been posed, how self-determination should appear to us, we should possibly ensure that everyone is clear on why we should seek self-determination. Therefore, for this segment of the summit, I'll highlight 9 key reasons why it is imperative that Afro-descendants, that is, Black Americans, become self-determined. Afterwards, I'll touch briefly on the question, how self-determination should appear to us. The following 9 key selected critical circumstances, they're reasons why Afro-descendants should be motivated to seek self-determination. We'll start off by looking at number 1. Afro-descendant median household income for 2021 was just 69% of the nation's household income. Number 2, Afro-descendants' mean household wealth in 2019 was 7 times smaller than the mean wealth of white households. Number 3, 19.5%, almost 20% of Afro-descendants lived in poverty in 2021, while only about 12% of Americans live in poverty. Right now, in 2022, only 45.3% of Afro-descendant households are homeowners, while nearly 70%, almost 66% of U.S. households are homeowners. In 2021, only 26.1% of Afro-descendants above the age of 25 held college degrees, while almost 40%, actually 39% of U.S. residents over 25 years of age held college degrees. Number 6, on the 2019 4th, 8th, 12th grade reading and mathematics standard assessments, academic assessments that are conducted by the U.S. Department of Education, Afro-descendant youth performed the poorest of all 8 racial and ethnic groups that were tested. This is not a new finding. It is a perennial outcome. This is something we should be disturbed about. Number 7, Afro-descendants comprised 33.6% of those imprisoned in the nation's jails and in prisons, federal and state prisons and local jails in 2020, 33.6%. Yet we only comprise about 12% of the population. Very importantly, about 96% of the about 3 million Afro-descendant business enterprises are of the sole proprietor variety. Only about 135,000 of those 3 million enterprises are large enough to have employees on the payroll. And related to that, of those 3 million businesses, they earn receipts of about $206 billion back in the 2018-2019 year period, which is less than 15% of the 1.4 or $1.5 trillion spending power that we had at that time. Now, finally, this is number 9. We should be aware that as a result of the research performed to develop vaccines for COVID-19, scientists have developed the capability of producing individualized vaccines on demand. These vaccines on demand are consistent with individuals' genetic and biological profiles. We believe that this new technology, this new capability, will facilitate the designing and manufacture of diseases to order. These diseases will kill the unwanted and leave the wanted alone. Now to the question, what will self-determination look like? Well, we've thought about that, and we've written about it in a book that we prepared a couple of years ago called Exodus, a book for Black Americans showing a way out and up. But we don't have time to discuss all of those ideas here. But what we want to emphasize is that all of the points that we have made, all of the foregoing points, should make it clear to Afro-descendants, to Black Americans, that we have many reasons to want to be self-determined. All we have to do is to develop the will. And we know that if there's a will, there's a way, and we can find the way. I'll stop here and listen as other panelists express and convey their visions of what Afro-descendants should have as determination, as self-determination in the future. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Robinson. Next, we'll have Dr. Ray speak on the same topic. What does self-determination look like to you for descendants of enslaved Africans?
Thank you. It's really good to be here, and thanks for the invitation. And it's good to see members of the Afro-Descendant Nation. We've had a lot of work done in the past, and hopefully we'll do some more in the future. I guess as a scholar, my name is Ray Winbush, Director of the Institute for Urban Research at Morgan State University and HBCU in Baltimore, Maryland. When I think of separation, and that's the only word that I can think of with regards to self-determination, self-determination can only occur when there is political separation, either by eliminating or moving away from alien forces in the Black community. That's the only way you can talk about it. And historically, there's been two brands of that, if you please. The first is international, and we see this mostly in the movement by the Honorable Marcus Garvey in the early 1920s and so forth, that he called for a mass exodus of us, leaving this country, returning to Africa. I'm seeing some of this right now when you look at more African people in America and the Caribbean are returning to Africa, as well as the African nations themselves having things like the years of return that we recently saw in Ghana and Nigeria. The other type of separation that we've seen historically has been internally within the United States. Examples of that would include going back with Edwin McCabe in 1890 when he told Black folk, as well as Ida B. Wells telling Black folk to move to Oklahoma so that they could be self-determining in how they ran their government, schools, and so forth. We see it in the Republic of New Africa during the 1970s and 80s. And one that is not that known, in 1934, Oscar Brown Sr., who was the father of entertainer Oscar Brown Jr., he organized a group called the National Movement for the Establishment of the 49th State. And he actually asked the government and tried to organize the government and Black folk around the country to give us a state. So you see domestic as well as international movements towards self-determination. I think I can't again conceive of, self-determination without removing ourselves from this country. And I doubt very seriously, this government is going to allow Black folk to have a 51st state that would be all Black where people could go. So I think that we really have to talk seriously about relocating our people the way Garvey did in the 1920s and wanted to do, which has not occurred, but we have to seriously think about doing it. I'll stop there and we'll have more discussion later. Thank you.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Dr. Ray. Next, we will hear from our monarch on the same topic, Queen Mashaki Muhammad.
Good morning, everyone. I have been introduced to you as Queen Mashaki Muhammad, but I also want you to know that I'm known in my legal community as Harriet Abubakar. I have practiced in the states of Georgia and California. I'm past president of the Georgia Association of Black Women Attorneys and past president of the Georgia Association of African American Attorneys. And of course, a graduate of the UCLA School of Law, having received my doctorate degree in 1980. I want you to know a little bit about me so that now and in the future, you will understand some of the things that I have gone through to get to this position in life now. I came from a small town background in Watsika, Illinois. I know most of you haven't heard of it. It's a small white town, and I grew up as a child in that environment. And then I moved to Chicago, Illinois, where I was teased because I had such a white accent. But during those times, I got exposure to both worlds, and it has benefited me. I feel comfortable in the white environment, and I feel comfortable in my Black environment. Now, why did we move on to the international scene? It's because of an incident that took place in New York many years ago when Malcolm X was live and active then and a part of the Nation of Islam. Something happened on the docks, and the boats that were from Egypt were not allowed to dock and unload their whatever that they were having that day. I don't remember. But they reached out to Malcolm X, and he reached out to the community to find out what was going on. We found out that some of the Jewish community was involved in it. It had something to do with the dispute. Malcolm went to our people on the streets, got to talking. They put in a boycott that was very successful in Harlem. And soon, miraculously, the dock blockage was undone, and they were allowed to unload their equipment, their packages, everything. So from that, there became an arrangement that was made by Malcolm X with Gamal Abdel Nasser. He was president of what then was called the Jumhuriyat al-Arabiyyat al-Muttahida, United Arab Republic. This ended up in becoming an arrangement between Nasser and the Honorable Elijah Muhammad. They selected my then first husband, Akbar Muhammad, who was Elijah Muhammad's baby, and I to go over to Cairo and live there and become cultural attachés between the two unions. And this proved to be very, very fruitful. And it gave me the chance to learn the Arabic culture, learn the Arabic language. And from then I was in an international mood. One day, right around 1992, I believe it was, is when self-determination as an identity became an issue for me. My husband, my current husband, the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, called me in and discussed the possibilities of us now approaching the international arena and letting it be known what our future intentions are as a people. This was something new to me. I knew nothing about the United Nations, and I really had to start from scratch. And some of the nooks and crannies I had to experience had funny stories behind them, but because time is limited, I won't get into that. But my husband and I spent 17 years traveling to the United Nations in Geneva, Switzerland. And we were trying to get ourselves established and known as a people that fit on this world stage. I was traveling with my current husband, Silas Muhammad. And we learned a lot of things. During those first few years, we went under the auspices of a church there in Geneva that was giving us training in how to lobby in the United Nations. And at that time, I had no badge. I was not of NGO status. We weren't quite sure what we needed to do. So I did whatever was necessary. I found out that in order to give an intervention there, you had to come in under the auspices of a known and recognized NGO, which stands for non-governmental organizations. And we did find out that it was possible to do that. The guards at the UN weren't really all of that cautious about who was coming in. So if you could act like you belonged, they'd let you in. One day I was a Chinese gentleman who had given me his pass. And that just tickled the heck out of me that I could walk past them and go in there and give an intervention as a Chinese man. But we learned a lot of things in those years. And we learned that I was put under the guidance of a Dutch attorney. And he would take me around to people, introduce me, and let them know why we were there in the UN. And I want to share this history with you because a lot of our people and the world do not know that that happened in that time and in that manner. So this is my chance to share with you what we did when we first went to the UN. The UN organized a training session for us. They called it UNPO, Unrecognized Nations and Peoples Organization. And it lasted about a week. And we met in The Hague, the Netherlands. And what they did during that time was to teach us what we could do if we were interested in becoming a nation. That's what this whole entire week was devoted to, helping unrecognized nations and people become states or nations. And one state that came out of that whole session was the state of Georgia, not the one here in the United States, but the one over in Europe. They came out of that meeting that we had, and we learned a lot of things. So to us, and what we need to do as part of our topic, to what we look like, we have established, with the help of the United Nations, an identity for ourselves. And we're going to get more into that during this session today. And we're going to let you know some of the things that can be done, because they pointed out to us during that week that you don't have to have all of your services in place. You could become like the Principality of Liechtenstein. That's something they used as an example for us. And Liechtenstein makes contract with neighbors nearby for major services. That's how they got started out. So something for our professionals to consider is the fact that if we don't have all of the things that a nation should have to get launched, we could do something like that also. That's something that's available. So we will continue what it is that we can do as we go on with today's program. Thank you.
Thank you, Queen Mashaki. Next, we will have Brother Shaka Barak speak on the topic. What does self-determination look like to you for descendants of enslaved Africans? And please provide a brief introduction of yourself first.
First, giving praise to the creator of the universe, to the Honorable Silas Muhammad and his wife, Queen Mashaki Muhammad, and the members of the Lost and Found Nation of Islam, and followers of the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, Messenger of Allah, Master Fard Muhammad. I say Assalamu alaikum. I'm also so very thankful to the High God for giving to us the Jamaican-born Honorable Marcus Mosiah Garvey, who gave to us the first and largest mass movement in the United States, the Universal Negro Improvement Association and African Communities League. I'm honored to be invited to participate in the Afro-Descendant Nation Self-Determination Summit 2022 alongside of these distinguished panelists. My name is Shaka Barak, a member of the UNIAACL and have held many local, regional, and international offices. I'm also the president of the Marcus Garvey Institute, a research organization on the life and the works of the Honorable Marcus Garvey. I also have met Dr. Y.N. Clyde and went to the United Nations on several occasions with the International Human Rights Association of American Minorities. Today, because of my interest in the movie Woman King, I have regular conversations with the United Nations ambassador from the Republic of Benin. What does self-determination look like to me for the descendants of enslaved Africans? To me, the discussion begins thousands of years ago when Africans gave to the world the first civilizations, when we gave art, science, literature, mathematics, and to the world. To me, I must acknowledge the great empires of Ghana, Mali, Songhai, and the kingdoms of Dahomey, Yoruba, Ashanti, Zulu, Hausa, where African women were a major partner in building, maintaining, and expanding our civilizations, whether in war or in peace. I'm also reminded that in 1513, the Portuguese began the transatlantic slave trade and how hundreds of thousands of us landed upon the shores of the Americas. The horrors of this damnable institution of slavery carried out on the southern plantations and the sugar, rice, cotton, tobacco plantations throughout North, South, and Central America was the most barbaric practices ever employed by people calling themselves human beings. I am once again reminded of how our men and women have resisted. I remember the many petitions and complaints of our people for justice against taxation without representation, but also remember how we fought and died for freedom through the many revolts and insurrections. Because I remember, I am thankful to the Toussaint overtures who gave us the Haitian Revolution. I am thankful to Paul Coffey, who sought to set up a separate government in West Africa. And I'm thankful for the insurrectionists like Gabriel Prosser and Reverend Nat Turner. I remember how the Baptist and Methodist churches had a hand not only in serving as places of worship, of schools, and places of refuge, but they had hands in the insurrections. In 1865, when slavery was abolished, it was followed by 90 years of Jim Crow and Jane Crow-ism. And thousands of lynchings, poor schools, housing, poor housing, unemployment. And let me share how the Honorable Marcus Garvey called together our people from around the world at the first international convention in 1920, when 25,000 came on opening day. A plebiscite was achieved, and after 31 days of this convention, a Declaration of Rights was created with 12 complaints and 54 human rights demands. I remember how the messenger, the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, was also a member of the UNIAACL and then gave us another movement, the Nation of Islam. And today, both of the movements are still alive. I conclude by saying that our self-determination must be based on knowing ourselves and our history. It means knowing our rights and fighting like Black Panthers under David Walker's appeal and answering Malcolm X's call by any means necessary and agreeing that we will unite our communities until we can create our villages of peace like that which was set up in Dimona, Israel, and that we pursue our economic, political, and educational ends across religious lines and under Black nationalism. Thank you.
Thank you, Brother Shaka. The legacy continues for the Hebrew Israelite nation. Our condolences to Prince Aziel's family. And we have his son, young Prince, with us here today. Young Prince, if you would honor us and answer the question by introducing yourself briefly and answer the question, what does self-determination look like to you for descendants of enslaved Africans?
Absolutely. I'm so honored and privileged to be here this morning amongst this august body, first invoking the name of God, all of his prophets and all of the ancestors who have given their life for God. I'm eternally grateful for. I want to thank personally the great leader and teacher that is amongst us, the Honorable Silas Muhammad, his wife, Queen Ashaka, and all of the Laos Found Nation of Islam, and all of those who are the Afro-Descendant Nation, and everyone that is in this beautiful audience and participating in this beautiful conversation. I greet you in the words of peace. Shalom alaikum. Assalamu alaikum. You are absolutely correct. We are mourning the loss of our late great Prince, my personal father, Prince Asiel, but we do so not in sadness, but we do so with peace of mind. And I say that as I introduce myself, because my father lived a full life that was dedicated and predicated on the word of God and the liberation of God's people, nation. He trained me, as he did so many others, to follow in his footsteps so that we could continue to liberate our people in the name of God, so that no stone is left unturned. When you say, what does self-determination mean to me? And I will be brief. Even though I am young in age, relatively speaking, because of the experiences of my father and those who he has blessed me to study up under and the knowledge that he has imbued me with, I am very old in spirit. And as our great brother has just articulated, the teachings of the Honorable Marcus Mosiah Garvey, and all of those great African civilizations that preceded us up into the very day, we don't have an excuse, nor do we have a lack of information or examples that we can follow in this day and time that allows us to be free and have the propensities to enact self-determination. But more so, we're doing it today, this very panel, with all of those who have their expertise, their experience, their knowledge in the realm of self-determination. The answer is, how do we bring it all together collectively so that we all have our part to play in the life source that is self-determination for Afro-descendant nation? Self-determination is implementation. I think that's the very key. It's not that we don't know what to do. It is doing it long enough so that we see the advantageous benefits and that we're able to bring into fruition the result and the desired product. You're absolutely correct. Not only am I a son of my father, Prince Asiel, who was a part and is a part eternally and perpetually of the Hebrew Israelite community, who left America in 1967, first going through the jungles and the bush of Liberia in 1967 and being there for 2.5 years before reaching the promised land, which is not a land of Europeans, but a land of Afro-descendants, and reclaiming our birthright and establishing our own sovereign nation, which was built out of necessity. We were not allowed to participate in their schools. We were not allowed to have the appropriate and proper health care, nor were we allowed to even find minimal jobs that allow us to sustain ourselves. So everything that we had to do was on two fronts. Internally, we would develop the necessary institutions that will allow us to serve and protect ourselves. So we created our own schools. We created our own farms. We created and built our own homes out of an abandoned community that was left from former nuclear reactor workers. We built our own birthing centers, our own sewing centers, and on and on and on. But to finance that, we had to have an external component, which would bring in the resources. So we had to develop relationships with other sovereign nations. And that was my father's particular responsibility. not only through America and the diaspora of the Caribbean and South and Central America, he went through the internal or the interior of the continent, reaching all of those who were amenable to Black people having the ability to self-determine their own future. And so we were able to bring the necessary resources in, whether it be support financially, whether it be access to raw materials, or whether it just be other sovereigns backing us as a sovereign ourselves. See, the part that we have to play supersedes whatever our own personal opinion is relative to self-determination. It is seeing the value in each and every one of us and what we bring to the table and allowing that to sustain us. That is the key, and that's how I see self-determination being brought into fruition, because I myself am a product of two worlds. My mother was a Muslim follower of the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad and a student of him. And so my very life is the combination of the two. So I was blessed to not just see from the Hebraic perspective self-determination, but from one of the greatest examples known to man through the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad and what he was able to do in America, created a nation unto itself. So we have all of the answers. Now we just have to do the work. And I believe that's what we're doing now. That's what we've been doing. If I look at the Honorable Silas Muhammad and the Lost Foundation and the beautiful idea to even grow the concept of a nation of Islam to the Afro-descendant nation, where it's all encompassing, that we're able to morph from 40 to 50 million to 400 plus million. What a beautiful thing. The sacrifice that him and the Queen did by going overseas and studying the necessary law that requires us to be a free nation. I mean, again, we have all that we need at our hands and at our feet. Now it's time to do the work, and it's imperative that my generation understands the sacrifice that was made for me to be here so that we can continue this work and we don't fall asleep and get lulled to sleep by the adversaries who want us to be perpetual slaves. Self-determination is unification. Self-determination is implementation. And that's what I see in this day and time. I thank you so very much for giving me this opportunity to speak.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Prince Yusuf. Next, we will have Salih Muhammad speak on the topic, what does self-determination look like to you for descendants of enslaved Africans? And briefly introduce yourself. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Dr. Akila Bukaram, and I want to thank, send greetings to the Honorable Salis Muhammad and Queen Mashaki Muhammad. Thank you so much for having me here. I'm honored to be able to speak on this panel. My name is Salih Muhammad, co-founder of AYIN Global, an acronym for Afro-Descendant Youth Network Global, Righteous Intelligence in the Fight for Human Rights and Self-Determinations for Afro-Descendants, and I'm from Washington, D.C. My vision of self-determination would be the unification of Afro-descendants within the global diaspora for the purpose of autonomous external self-government. According to esteemed law professor Hurst Hanum, self-determination has two aspects, internal and external. Internal self-determination is the right of the people of a state to govern themselves without outside interference. External self-determination is the right of people to determine their own political status and to be free of alien domination, including formation of their own independent state. There were two critical points in history where the United States government had a valuable opportunity to allow the so-called freedmen, now known as African Americans or Afro-descendants, the opportunity to manifest their internal self-determination. Malcolm X once said, "Revolution is based on land. Land is the basis of all independence. Land is the basis of freedom, justice, and equality." The first time the freedmen or African Americans were presented with the opportunity to partake in internal self-determination was when Special Field Order Number 15 was issued. It was a wartime order proclaimed by Union General William T. Sherman on January 16, 1865. As we all know, after the assassination of President Lincoln, President Andrew Johnson confiscated the lands from the freedmen and issued them back to the former Confederate slave owners. The second time the freedmen or African Americans were presented with an opportunity to partake in internal self-determination was during the establishment of the Freedmen Savings Bank. a bank established for the newly emancipated slaves. The bank was eventually embezzled of about $3.7 million from roughly 70,000 ex-slaves, which is roughly about $1.3 billion today by its appointed white administrators. Based on these two instances alone, I do not trust in our ability to practice internal self-determination here in America without interference. Thomas Jefferson once said, "Every man and every body of men on earth possesses the right to self-government," and I believe it should be external. Thank you.
Thank you, Salia. Next, we will have Ida Hakeem speak on the topic, what does self-determination look like to you for descendants of enslaved Africans? And briefly introduce yourself. Thank you.
Thank you. Assalamu alaikum. It's an honor to be here with you, and I appreciate the opportunity. My name is Ida Hakeem. How did I get the name Hakeem? In 1983, my martial arts instructor, Khalid Hakeem, handed me the book, The Fall of America, by the Honorable Elijah Muhammad. I'm a person very familiar with the Bible, and I've been seeking the truth for a long time. My thought was, this could be true. Khalid and I moved to the south side of Chicago. It was a culture shock. I had a lot to learn. I wrote to Mr. Muhammad, Mr. Silas Muhammad, asking him, what can I do? He answered, reparations. I remember the moment that I read his words. My first thought was, white people are going to kill me for this. I wrote a book entitled I Bear Witness, and I went to work studying reparations. I met Queen Mother Dorothy Lewis, and I learned from Cobra. In 1992, Mr. Muhammad asked me to organize and create a UN consultative NGO. I took the only path I could see and organized white people into Caucasians United for Reparations and Emancipation Cure. We got together and wrote the book, Reparations, the Cure for America's Race Problem. And we produced a second book, The Debtors, Whites Respond to the Call for Black Reparations. We also produced magazines. We met together. We did TV and radio shows. We assisted attorney Deidre Farmer-Pailman in her lawsuit. We attended rallies, and in 1997, we achieved NGO consultative status. We had 120 members at that time. After that, we facilitated the participation of Black leaders at the UN 3 or 4 times a year for 9 years. And I'll talk more about what was achieved in the next section. I also would like to talk about what I'm hoping for and what I would like to do to help in bringing about a better world. What does self-determination look like to me? It looks like an absolute necessity. You must step away from the white world and develop your own world based upon your moral core. You have the wisdom of the ages, and we need you. The world needs you. I don't have the qualifications to create that world with you. It's for you to do. My desire is to assist you in finding the way to unite as a human family. I believe that's a must in order to achieve freedom and recognition as a people. Thank you for listening. Assalamu alaikum.
Thank you, Ida. Next, we will have Brother Let speak on the topic of what does self-determination look like to you for descendants of enslaved Africans? And please briefly introduce yourself.
Thank you, my sister, and thank you to the family for inviting me to be on this panel today. My name is Willard Lack. I am the male co-chair of the National Coalition of Blacks for Reparations in America. Founders of this organization had the insight back
Peace and blessings to the family. Peace and blessings to the family. I am Brother Shahid Ali, Digital Manager of the Afrodescendant Nation. Thank you for bearing with us here as we get started with our event, a first event of its kind in Toronto, Canada, with the Afro-Descendant Nation, as we expand to collaborate with all of our Afro-Descendant brothers and sisters throughout the diaspora. Truly appreciate you taking the time to be with us. And again, apologize for the delay for those of you who have waited. Peace and blessings to everyone in the chat. Peace to all seeing being, Mama Bear, Afua Warner. Peace to Brother Okeke out there in Jacksonville, Florida. And peace to Trey Wilson, right back at you. As I said, my name is Brother Shahid Ali, also known as Afrodescendant Ali, which is my social media handle. We are doing this event in two different areas. Normally, we're in the United States for a majority of our events, but we have expanded to another country within North America. Our close brothers there in Canada. This gentleman here has helped to coordinate this event. Truly appreciate his efforts. Brother Kai, please introduce yourself to the Afro-Descendant Nation family.
Peace and blessings, everybody. My name is Uwa Abantuum, and I'm honored to be here to join the Afrodescendant family. Very excited to this next direction. In terms of a little bit of background on myself, I was born in Montreal, Quebec, here in Canada, and migrated with the Great Migration that took place somewhere in the 70s to Toronto, Ontario. During that time, it's been some great growth opportunities. I've had opportunities to interact with my brothers and sisters in the United States. Here in Canada, I was a part of starting a couple of independent African-centered schools, of which I'm of the view that they were probably the first of its kind, or their kind in Canada. During this time, I've also worked in mental health, but more importantly, I've done or been committed to really servicing our community, whether it be bringing back ancestral teachings to children through the arts, through drama, theater, music, through enhancing physical and mental health through martial arts, and to really help build a community that is striving towards reclaiming and recapturing our self-determination. So I've been very blessed to meet Brother Shahid and other people in the nation. I fondly say I'm not sure how it's happened, but I'm happy I hopped on the train and plan to be a part of whatever work that needs to take place throughout Canada. So even though I'm here in Toronto, I am committed to traveling throughout Canada to help spread the word and help to build. So thank you. Again, really honored to be here.
Truly appreciate it, sir. And if you're from the north of the border there, please let yourself be known in the chat, and leave your email address with us as well, so we can connect with you. If you're part of the reparations movement, if you're part of the self-determination movement, if you're a nationalist, Pan-Africanist, or if you just believe in justice, we'd love to connect with you and work with you as well. For those of us, this is a global movement. We're taking our place on the world stage as a people. Afro-descendants, if we were, as far as a ranking, is concerned, we're the fourth largest group of peoples on the earth. So that's pretty significant, 250 million spread throughout the slavery diaspora. Again, I am Brother Shahid Ali. Thank you again, Brother Kai. And just wanted to give a brief overview for the family there in Canada. I do have prepared a presentation. Let's get this going here. So we're just going to do a brief introduction to Afrodescendant Nation. Afrodescendant Nation is the latest installation or institution that has come out of work that has started over 30 years ago. And the man that you're seeing here depicted at the United Nations, the work started by this man, the Honorable Silas Muhammad, and his wife, Attorney Harriet Abubakar, and Madam Ida Hakim. So we pictured him here because a lot of this work started more than 30 years ago, and a lot of this work has come about as a result of his efforts. So we'll just start with the mission statement and a summary of the work, and also the work at the United Nations, and just go over, do an overview of the past events that we have done, as we've been very busy with the Afro-Descendant Nation here, as most of you know who are subscribed to the channel. So for the mission statement of the Afro-Descendant Nation, our mission is to unify Afro-descendants around the issues of self-determination, human rights, and reparations for the development of a nation with peace and liberty through fair, equitable, and just laws. The working definition of Afro-descendant, as recognized by the United Nations, the term Afro-descendants refers to descendants of peoples who were forcibly dispossessed of their homeland, Africa, were transported to the Americas and slavery diaspora for the purpose of enslavement, were subjected to slavery, were subjected to forced mixed breeding and rape, have experienced through force the loss of mother tongue, culture, and religion, and or have experienced racial discrimination due to lost ties and partially lost ties from their original identity. All of this describes the experiences of those who would be classified under the identity in the United Nations and internationally as an Afro-descendant. If you fall under these, you are classified internationally as an Afro-descendant. As prior to the work of the Honorable Silas Muhammad, Attorney Harriet Abubakar, and Madam Ida Hakim, and 19 other countries, pretty much as far as so-called African Americans in America, and this would be applicable to those in Canada as well, especially those who migrated to Canada, escaping slavery in the United States, and those who are also from the Caribbean, Central and South America, which also constitutes the slavery diaspora. You are an Afro-descendant, and I'd also like to point to the scrolling screen at the top of the screen here. Please visit our website, Afrodescendant.org, and self-identify. Identify as an Afro-descendant today. So, Afro-Descendant Nation, the major themes are identity, self-determination, and reparations. Identity and self-determination are essential components for achieving full and complete reparations. Identity. The crucial role of Afrodescendant as global identity for African Americans in slavery diaspora. The term Afrodescendant represents more than just a label. It is a powerful acknowledgement of the shared history, struggles, and resilience of descendants of enslaved Africans across America. By recognizing the collective trauma of forced displacement, cultural erasure, and the loss of fundamental human rights, this identity can serve as a foundation for unified action. Adopting the Afrodescendant identity will empower efforts toward reparatory justice and self-determination and foster a sense of global solidarity among all descendants of enslaved African people in the Americas. So those of us who are descendants of those within the slavery diaspora, never before had we had an opportunity to kind of collectively collaborate and pursue something together as a result of the trauma that our ancestors faced and the lingering effects of those things that are still prevalent among us today. Here is the opportunity to embrace this identity, and we can continue these collaborations and discussion around identity and pursue reparations and self-determination. Self-determination, a path to freedom, justice, and equality for Afro-descendants. Reparations must have self-determination to achieve complete freedom, justice, and equality. Afro-descendant communities must have the autonomy to shape their future. To be meaningful, we must identify the connections between reparations and the right to self-determination. Reparations and self-determination go hand in hand. Self-determination comprises self-governance, economic independence, and cultural sovereignty. By separating from systems perpetuating oppression, Afro-descendants can gain control over their destiny and build a future rooted in dignity, equity, and self-reliance. So in the case that we hear many times, particularly for those within the United States, is self-determination. Never have those within the United States, perhaps those in Canada as well, they never had an opportunity to decide for themselves their nationality upon liberation from slavery. Upon being freed from slavery, especially within America, we just kind of inherited this citizenship without being able to choose for ourselves what our destiny was. Self-determination falls within that. For the first time after 400 years, we would like to decide what that looks like for us going forward. Separation. Why is separation necessary to achieve freedom, justice, and equality for Afro-descendants? Historical oppression. For 400 years, Afro-descendants have faced systemic oppression, exploitation, and discrimination. Separation allows them to break free from the institutions and systems perpetuating this injustice. Autonomy and control. Separation provides the opportunity to create and control independent systems, political, economic, educational, and social design to serve Afro-descendants' needs and interests without interference from those who historically oppressed them. Cultural preservation. It allows for the preservation and flourishing of Afro-descendants' unique cultural identities, traditions, and values which have often been suppressed and marginalized under oppressive systems. Safety and empowerment. Separation can create a safer environment, whereas Afro-descendants can thrive without the constant threat of racial violence, discrimination, and systemic inequality. True equality, achieving genuine equality, requires dismantling power imbalances. Separation enables the creation of spaces where Afro-descendants can build their foundations for success, free from the dominance of those who have historically held power over them. I'm going to introduce a term that is very familiar in the international arena, or several terms such as ethnocide and ethnogenesis. United Nations acceptance of ethnogenesis. Ethnocide, the deliberate and systemic destruction of the culture of an ethnic group. Ethnocide is being carried out against the indigenous. As an example, ethnocide is being carried out against the indigenous people by the destruction of our way of life, end quote. Ethnocide being the loss, as we stated in the working definition of Afro-descendant, the loss of religion, culture, and mother tongue. In the case of the African American people, or nations in North, Central, and South America, and the diaspora, the deliberate and systemic destruction of our original identity by forcible dispossession of our homeland, Africa, being kidnapped to the Americas, and slavery diaspora for enslavement, forcibly subjected to slavery, and forced mixed breeding and rape, have experienced through force the loss of mother tongue, the essential component that makes the essence of a people, their history, culture, and religion. So this is what we classify as ethnocide. The erasure, the forced, we have to stress forced, the forced erasure of culture. Excuse me, it's raining really heavy in the background where I am, so hopefully you can still hear me, family. So we have experienced ethnocide, with whether it be North America, Central America, South America. Many of those cultures have been preserved in secret, in the shadows. Many cultures have been brought over from Africa, again, against the will of those that have enslaved us. However, we were stripped of those and given an entirely new identity at the hands of our enslavers. And this is the crime that we have faced as a result of our experiences of 400 years in bondage in the Western Hemisphere. Ethnogenesis. Afro-descendants are experiencing ethnogenesis. Excuse me. The reestablishment of the mind or the resurrection of a people who have lost the identity of self due to 400 years of slavery. And this is according to the Human Rights Council. So, as a result of us embracing this identity, Afro-descendant, collectively, we are pretty much a new people, the beginning of a new people on the planet Earth that have never existed as a result of this shared experience. And that's whether your native language taken away from you, English was given to you, French was forced upon you, Portuguese was forced upon you, Spanish was forced upon you. This is our collective experience all the way around. Excuse me. As we continue with the concept of ethnogenesis, in the Americas region and throughout the diaspora, we who are the descendants of slaves are filled with dissatisfaction. And this is a quote from one of the sessions to the Commission on Human Rights by the Honorable Silas Muhammad, given in April of 2002. In the Americas region and throughout the diaspora, we, who are the descendants of slaves, are filled with dissatisfaction. And many of us do not know its source. The African American people in the United States are perhaps the first to recognize the source of our pain and the gravity of our situation. We know that we have been forcibly cut off, severed from our original identity, our mother tongue, religion, and culture. Those very things that give life to peoples. We have been dead for 400 years. Today, we are experiencing, in reality, the process of ethnogenesis, a word that describes the coming to life again of a people who have been scattered, forcibly cut off, severed, and now seemingly assimilated within the country of our domicile. Again, that is from a written statement to the 58th session of the Commission on Human Rights under the Provisional Agenda Item 4, Specific Groups and Individual, B, Minorities, March, April 2002, Mr. Silas Muhammad. So I just want to take a pause there. If there are any questions, please leave some questions in the chat, and we will try to respond to the chat as soon as possible. And I'd like to introduce you to our website, in which I'd like many of you to go, whether you're watching on the live stream or you will watch on the recording. Peace, Sister Cody. How are you? Can you hear me? Our wild sister is checking in. I am on our website. Hopefully everyone can see the website. Our website is Afrodescendant.org. We ask those of you to take a visit to our website, and you will find all of the information that I have imparted to you today there on the website. So I wanted to close out with a few of the works that have been done over the course of 30 years by the Honorable Silas Muhammad, Attorney Harriet Abu Bakr, and Madam Ida Hakeem, and the 19 others, and so many others. We salute all of those that preceded us, and just wanted to, again, reparations, identity, and self-determination. We haven't really touched on reparations. We mostly talked about the identity, but as you can see on the website, reparations is part of our principles as far as pursuing self-determination. Why reparations? To repair the damage and lingering effects of plantation slavery, to restore us to a state of independence and self-determination, to govern ourselves according to our wishes and desires, to attain true freedom, justice, and equality on some of this earth that we can call our own. But what I also wanted to point out is a lot of the work the Honorable Silas Muhammad has done, and you can watch many of our videos to get the specific story about the regional seminars in the early 2000s, starting just following the World Conference Against Racism, on how the name Afrodescendants came about, the identity. So in 1994, the Honorable Silas Muhammad petitions for reparations, under the United Nations, to the United Nations under the 1503 procedure. Again, this is on our website, Afrodescendant.org. 1997, Mr. Muhammad again issues a written statement to the United Nations. 1998, written and oral statements to the United Nations. 1999, 2000, written and oral statements. 2000, written statement to the World Conference Against Racism. 2001, written and oral statements to the United Nations. And again, here's where I discussed the formation, foundation of the name, the term. Internationally recognized identity of Afro-descendant came about as a result of United Nations sponsored regional seminars for Afro-descendants in Honduras in 2002. And then another written and oral statement in 2002 to the United Nations. You can read the full statements at our website, Afrodescendant.org, and I would be remiss to leave out allforreparations.org, where there's a list of 20 plus written and oral statements by representatives of All for Reparations, by Cure Caucasians United for Reparations and Emancipation, by the Honorable Silas Muhammad, and so many others. There are pictures and that document this history very well of all of the experiences over the last 30 years. And also what I wanted to point out on our website, in this section, Why Reparations, it would be your opportunity, section there. Let's see. You'll be able to fill out the application and declare yourself an Afro-descendant via our website. Pardon me, I'm trying to find that form for you. But in the meantime, do you self-identify as Afro-descendant? And as an Afro-descendant, you can be a Hebrew Israelite Afro-descendant, you can be a Christian Afro-descendant, you can be a Muslim Afro-descendant. No matter what your belief is, as long as you fit the criteria of Afro-descendant, the experiences of your ancestors and yourself, under the working definition that I read before, you are an Afro-descendant. You can be ADOS Afro-descendant, FBA Afro-descendant, Freedman Afro-descendant, Indigenous Afro-descendant. If you fall under those bullet points that I read previously under the working definition, please go to the website so you can stay up to date and you can become a part of this self-determination movement. Before I close out, I'd also like to encourage you to log in or subscribe to our channel, National Reparations Convention on YouTube, NRC Social on Facebook, NRC Social on Instagram, and NRC Social, NRC National Reparations Convention Social on Twitter. There you will see our most recent events, where we had during the weekend of Malcolm X's birthday, May 17th through the 20th, where we had our second National Reparations Convention in Washington, D.C., where we capped it off with a press conference at the National Press Club with presidential candidate Cornel West and vice presidential candidate Melina Abdullah. That was a very good weekend in which We collaborated across the board with many different speakers and organizations, to include Attorney Malik Zulu Shabazz of Black Lawyers for Justice, John C. Barnett of True Healing Under God or Thug, Dr. Anthony Browder, Professor James Small, of course, the Honorable Silas Muhammad, Attorney Harriet Abubakar, our President Akila Mukarram, Governor General Ishmael Abdul Salam, of CEO of allforreparations.org, Pamela Denise Long of the Freedmen's Bureau, Rashad Singleton of the National Reparations League. Shout out to Nkechi Taifa, Cam Howard, strong soldiers, historians, and scholars and workers in this reparations movement. That was our National Reparations Convention that took place this past May. You also can find a recording of that on on our social media platforms. Just prior to that, on October 7th, 2023, in Atlanta, Georgia, we held another National Reparations Convention at Georgia State University. You can find a recording of that there. What you saw prior to this live stream was one of the first collaborative summits that we had, the Self-Determination Summit that took place in 2022. And as many of you who do subscribe to the channel, you've seen a number of our teachings, our self-identity, Afro-Descendant identity teaching. We recently had a reparations boycott teaching. And what you see scrolling across the screen right now, text the word reparations. That we had our plebiscite teaching. And all of those recordings are on this channel. And we have many of those coming in. So text the word reparations to 877-506-2184, 877-506-2184, and text the word reparations there. You will get all the latest updates from the Afro-Descendant Nation and all of the National Reparations Convention social media platforms and all of our events that are coming up. We have one that's coming up on October 26th with Attorney Malik Zulu Shabazz, an emergency meeting discussing in Washington, D.C., discussing one of the main topics that are coming out, particularly in the East Coast of the United States and all the major cities in the United States, really, gentrification, an emergency meeting, and hopefully we'll be able to live stream that there. We're beating the drums, we're doing the work, and we'd like to be part of the family and the family to be part of us, so we can collaborate and continue to push forward and make gains in this entire movement. And with that said, I will close out there. And Sister Cody, are you there?
Greetings, brother. Can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. I can hear you. Thank you so much. Welcome, welcome. I am going. I'm sorry. Say that again.
I do apologize for my late entry, but duty calls. But thank you for providing the link for me to be able to join in as late as I am. I hope everything went well and it was a successful event.
Ma'am, it's all good. Truly appreciate you joining us today. I'm going to hand it over to Sister Cody, Chief of Staff to the President of the Afro-Descendant Nation. She has a few good words for you from the President's office, and we will entertain your questions following the presentation by Sister Cody. Sister Cody, you can take it away.
Greetings, brothers and sisters out there in Canada. Thank you so much for agreeing to this meet and greet. I am a Cody Singleton, Chief of Staff to the President of the Afro-Descendant Nation, and it is my pleasure to send greetings to you all. I'm so very excited to know that we're making these connections in Canada. You all. We're working expeditiously hard to try to spread the word about the Afro-descendant identity. One thing that we have in common is our ancestors were enslaved and abused for a number of years, and we're coming, like our dear brother Dr. Martin Luther King said, we want to go and collect our check. And so it is very imperative that we garner as much support from as many of our brothers and sisters throughout the diaspora that identify with Afro-descendant. And so, like I said, it's a pleasure that you guys are on board. My brothers and sisters are on board with identifying with the Afro-descendant and identity and wanting to be a part of our Afro-descendant nation. So on behalf of the president, I want to say greetings and welcome aboard. I look forward to working with you all and seeing more informative and more interactive events such as this. Thank you so much, Shahid.
So I did all that. All right, peace, family. Thank you for letting me know you couldn't hear my volume. Peace to Afua. So yeah, I just wanted to check in with the family there in Toronto. Are there any questions or comments?
We have a sister that just joined us. Maybe if you want to go and introduce your person, that would be great.
Hetapu, my name is I am a friend of what Sarah said in Toronto, and I'm would consider myself someone of African origin. I don't particularly use the word descendant because I find it's a little bit condescending personally, just a personal. I rather call myself of African origin, although people ask me if I'm from Africa, I'm not. You know what I mean? But my parents are from Jamaica, in the Caribbean, and I just came back from Jamaica, and I spent 3 years there. And in fact, the reality is to Africa, almost identical in terms of the way that they live. They still do things like carry water. They still pick fruit off the trees. You know what I mean? It can be either very rural or very urban. So I think as a person of African origin from the Caribbean or coming from the Caribbean background, I think it's important for both of us to educate ourselves in addition to the reparation. I think education is important because we don't really know how similar we are, as well as African Americans. When we see Anna, we don't realize how similar our culture is. So, and the fact that we think a lot of people say we've lost the culture, but after spending 3 years in the Caribbean, I don't really see what we've lost per se, other than maybe the language. But a lot of cultural things. I spent some time in Africa as well. I was in Africa. I don't want to be too long-winded, but thank you for having me, and I appreciate the discussion.
No, pleasure. If I can ask a quick question, what parish did you spend time in?
Because it was my first time in Jamaica living there, I went out there on vacation. I've been in Manchester, and I was in Clarendon because I was on the border. My mother's from the Clarendon border. I was in Manchester, I was in Clarendon, I was in St. Catherine, I was in St. Anne, I was in St. Mary, and because I'm of Maroon ancestry, so I went there to also study the Maroon culture and get more familiar with the Maroon tradition and culture in Jamaica. And learned that we still have our language as well. We still speak Twi. A lot of the Maroon elders still speak Twi. And the Maroon language is actually Twi, Akan Twi. So it would be beneficial to the African continental diaspora and for the community here for us to understand that Jamaica is not just about reggae and marijuana and dancing. There's a lot of African culture in Jamaica, like a lot. I was shocked personally. So it was an education experience for me. So I went there to educate myself, and I think that I learned a lot. It's that I had no idea. I didn't know when I went to the Maroon towns. I had no idea. I actually met a relative because my mother, unfortunately, she doesn't know her father. Because some things that come, slavery. It was the. But anyway, she doesn't know her father. So we are a particular name, and I found out that my grandfather, my mother never knew, is from a Maroon town. Because a man that lived in a Maroon town told me that he knows my grandfather, or he knows of my grandfather. All that I've learned, and it's a lot to unpack. There's joy, but there's also trauma. There's also questions that I have because now I have to reshape my belief about Jamaica, Jamaican culture. You know what I mean? I have to reshape everything that I believed, everything that I thought that was Jamaican. I have to now restructure my mind about what is Jamaica based on my experience. And I found myself carrying water, which I've never done before, because in the village when there's no water, we have to carry water. So the Jamaicans were looking at me like, "Why is this Canadian here carrying water?" So it was a wonderful experience, even carrying me, and I really appreciate being able to be here.
That's beautiful. Thank you for sharing that. And I agree. We do have to find out the places where we do align. And within many Afro-descendant communities, there are instances in which some of the culture has been preserved. In the case of the United States, particularly in the American South, I know for a fact in South Carolina and other places like that, and in Latin America, etc., Haiti, you will also find that. So we do have that shared experience, and with further collaboration, we look to discover, more of the similarities than we do as opposed to the differences. So truly appreciate this. I am also part Jamaican also. So from Westmoreland.
Oh, Westmoreland.
Yes.
Best beaches in Jamaica.
Yeah.
One of the best beaches in Jamaica.
So truly appreciate it. Look forward to hearing from you again. Hopefully you get your email, you sign up through the website. And would love to have you interview you on this channel as well about your experiences in Jamaica.
Thank you.
Thank you. Brother Kai, so before we close out, I just wanted, before we logged on, and we did have the conversation last week, just wanted to get a snapshot of the pockets of Afro descendants throughout Canada in the various provinces, and we know Ontario being the largest and most common. And sorry for disturbing you a snack in there, but just wanted to just get a brief, quick rundown, if you would be so kind. Thank you, sir.
Yeah, so when we look at Canada as a whole, we'll find the largest population in Toronto, and then the second largest would be in Montreal. Right, so for those of you who are not familiar, I'm going to kind of go from Toronto, which is kind of central east, and we're going to go east. I'm just going to walk us east, and so we're going to go to Montreal, Quebec. There we'll have a large, not only Afro-descendant population, but when we break it down, we'll find a lot of people of Haitian descent there in Montreal. Then we're going to go further east, and really what we're going to find in Halifax, Nova Scotia, is one of the older populations. And next to Halifax, Nova Scotia, there will be Prince Edward Island and Brunswick, Newfoundland. Very small, very, very, very small. But in Halifax, Nova Scotia, we will find quite an interesting history where we have the recordings back. So then now we're going to go further. We're going to go west, and right next to the province of Ontario, we're going to have Manitoba, and specifically Winnipeg, Manitoba. And so Winnipeg, there will be also a small pocket, but a very robust group of people. In Ontario, sorry, let me just also say, there will be the city of Ottawa, which is the nation's capital. So you'll have a groupings there in Ottawa. And as we go west of Ontario, let's just go west of Ontario, we have Winnipeg, Manitoba, then we're going to have the Prairie Provinces. So the Prairie Provinces would be Saskatchewan, and very small groupings there. There's Regina, Saskatoon, so very, very, very small groupings. But very important to note that it's a very long history. So in Canada, although the numbers may be small in many areas, there is a great history of longevity of people settling in pretty much all the provinces. And there's a lesser known history in places outside of Ontario. Now, within Canada, we have the territories, and the territories are north. The thing about the territories is they are the home of what we call the indigenous peoples, like the Inuit and such. The thing about Canada, the territories, is you literally, as far as I can see from a map, you got to go through Canada to get to the North Pole. So the populations in Northern Ontario and Northern Canada are not very high. Most of Canada's population is situated along the borders of the United States in the south. And that is primarily because of weather. It is extreme weather in the north. There are certain people that live here know that there are just times of the year where you don't go north because in some places in Canada, northern Canada, you would need to have a battery warmer to start your car. And that's how cold it gets in the northern parts of Canada. So as we move further west, so to make sure I cover everything, as we move further west, we'll get to Alberta, a beautiful province. And when I say province, that's our equivalent of states. Alberta is a beautiful province, and that's where you have the mountains. And the two major cities in Alberta are Calgary and Edmonton. In not large populations, you would find that Afro-descendants from the Caribbean may end up there through the oil industry. So they may work there and then go back to the Caribbean, in particular Edmonton. The culture of Calgary is, I'm trying to think of a state in the United States that I think is similar, because we have the Calgary Stampedes, very Western-like, very cowboy Western-like. I'm just wondering if that's like Montana.
Montana, Wyoming, maybe, okay. Yeah.
And then as we go to the end of Canada to the west is British Columbia, which major city is Vancouver, and it borders California, Washington state. And the weather is much milder, and so a lot of people like going to British Columbia, especially in Vancouver Island. The numbers there are moderate in terms of people of Afro-descendants. So it's moderate, and I wouldn't say high, but again, rich history, very rich history in British Columbia. So as we look at the provinces, you'll have a long-standing history in many of the provinces. The two largest, again, Toronto and Montreal, and then it kind of gets moderate to low as we get into Calgary, Edmonton. And as we go further east, again, we probably look at Halifax, Nova Scotia in terms of moderate population.
Awesome.
So Canada has a population of about 38 million people. It's not hugely popular because of weather.
Excellent. Thank you. Appreciate the rundown. I'm sure, a lot of our family here, they may not have known that. So thank you for giving that insight. Truly appreciate it. And with that said, we are just about done here, but I did want to point out again our website. You see crossing on the top of the screen here. You may not see it there on the Zoom, but I have it on the live stream on our page, National Reparations Convention. Visit our website, Afrodescendant.org. Also text the word reparations to 877-506-2184, 877-506-2184. go to our website, Afrodescendant.org, and identify as, fill out the application to identify as Afrodescendant. So thank you everyone for joining. We are going to end the live stream. Please check in with us when we will probably be doing a live stream tomorrow. So check in with us when you get a chance. Peace and blessings. Afro-Descendant Nation signing.